Hi guys, and welcome to the KingDumb podcast. I am your host, KingBullet, and on this podcast, I will talk about anything and everything that I find to be intriguing, interesting, or just something that I feel like needs to be talked about. Uh, if you are new to this is a new podcast, so I would appreciate it if you liked it, followed it, whatever it is on whatever platform it is that you're listening to. Make sure you give it a follow. It helps me out a lot, and you'll be notified every time I upload a new episode. So, for today, for the beginning of my podcast, as this is the first episode of my podcast, I wanted to talk about something that I find to be very interesting, and that is why new MMO games fail. Now, for those of you who don't know what an MMO is, it is a massive multiplayer online game. A lot of the times you will hear MMORPG, which is massive multiplayer online role-playing game. And these games consist of Elder Scrolls Online, Neverwinter, RuneScape, World of Warcraft, and many, many more. And so, the reason why I want to talk about this is because I've been known to play some MMO games in the past. At one point, I was rather popular with Bless Unleashed, with being if not the most viewed creator for the game. And if we look at MMOs as a whole, genre, there's been a massive issue after around 2005, 2006, they just don't stick around for very long, or they never really get popular. And this is something that I wanted to talk about, and something that I felt was in my wheelhouse for a good pilot episode, as why I believe the MMOs of this day and age no longer succeed. Now, to take a look back at some of the original MMO games, you have games like RuneScape and you have games like World of Warcraft. Those are the two that are most known in the MMO world. There's obviously more. There's games like EverQuest that was RPG became an MMO. There's Lord of the Rings Online, but I'm going to focus specifically on RuneScape and World of Warcraft because back all the way through like 2010 almost, if you were playing a game on the computer, 9 chances out of 10, someone was saying that they were either playing RuneScape or World of Warcraft. They were the hottest games for decades, essentially, and they're still alive today. They're still kicking. You have World of Warcraft, you have World of Warcraft Classic, you have new content being introduced. I don't think monthly, but like every couple months. And that's the same thing with RuneScape. You got RuneScape 3, which is the RuneScape version that's kept the most up to date. And then you got old school RuneScape, which is a version of RuneScape that is more like before some of the bigger updates have that went into RuneScape 3. And both of them are still getting regular updates. They're getting every single week they come out with another patch or another update to do another little bit of stuff, with main content things coming out 3 to 4 times a year. Now, if we look at some of the MMOs of recent, you have games like Bless Unleashed, which again I was rather known for. A lot of people found me through Bless Unleashed and originally knew me because I did a lot of stuff with Bless Unleashed. And if you look, Bless Unleashed officially dropped in February of 2020, and it was Xbox only, Xbox One, whatever, and it was exclusively there. And then it was super popular for about 3 to 4 months, and then it fell off. And then they brought it out on PlayStation, and it was super popular for 2 to 3 months, and then it fell off. And then after that, they decided that they were going to go to Steam, and Bandai Namco Entertainment of America, who was the publisher of Bless Unleashed, was no longer publishing Bless Unleashed whenever it went to Steam, and they eventually shut down their servers for the consoles, and it is now only available on Steam, and I don't believe too many people play it anymore. I will get around to why I think that is, but that's one game that I'm going to focus on, as well as one that hasn't quite died off but still follows the same routine, which is the Elder Scrolls Online. Now, Elder Scrolls Online came out quite a few years ago now. Uh, Let me see here. Whoops, I hope I didn't mess anything up there. The Elder Scrolls Online initially released back in 2014. So, as of recording this episode, it is about 9 years old now, which is very, very good for MMO games in this day and age. But it also did quite a few things different, but also the same. Now, why did old school RuneScape, or just RuneScape in general, and why did World of Warcraft or World of Warcraft Classic uh, end up being so achieving such success that no other MMOs have been able to copy? And I think that boils down to what each RuneScape and World of Warcraft are at its core. On one hand, you have RuneScape, which was a very story-driven, very focused, skill-based game where every single time that you level up anything in that game, it ends up making you feel really good. Like there's a skill on there, and it's one of the most boring skills in the game. It's called woodcutting, but when you level up woodcutting, you feel like you really succeeded, and you get this sense of accomplishment, even if it was just something very simple and you didn't do much. And then you go to World of Warcraft, where their main focus was raids and this group based content that you went in, and it was incredibly tough, and it had special equipment that you can get from it. And that was the focus of pretty much everything. The story was there for a couple years, and then it kind of fell apart. But at its core, it focuses on this end game, getting to raids and raiding with your friends. Now, that's what made those two games unique. If we look at something like Bless Unleashed had a lot of flaws. And one of the biggest flaws that I would say that it had was it followed the same template as almost every other MMO that has come out in the last 10 plus years. And I call it the Neverwinter template. Now, for those of you who don't know what Neverwinter is an MMO game that came out originally on Windows in 2013, and then eventually released on Xbox One in 2015 and PlayStation 4 in 2016. And in Neverwinter, you have a very basic story, nothing too rich, nothing too investing, but you are driven by this feeling of needing to continuously upgrade your gear and start getting towards this end game. And every time you start getting towards this end game, the goalposts are moved just a little bit further. And then it was a free to play game, but to be able to get any cosmetics and sometimes to get a step up, people would pay money and they would get special cosmetics, which that's fine, but games and developers need money to be able to continue having games be active and updated. And more so than that, whenever it's an MMO game, you also need to worry about whether you're keeping the servers up or not. It's not like your typical single player game like God of War, or like I don't know, Last of Us. For just games off the top of my head, they don't need servers. There's no online aspect to them. So the game is just the base game, and maybe they'll bring out DLC and everything else in the future, but they don't need to invest any money into having active online servers that people can connect to. And games that do connect and are successful are games like the Halo franchise, the Call of Duty franchise, Warframe, stuff like that. All of them have servers online that they pay regularly for. I'm not gonna say I know how, like, what they pay or how often, but it's a regular payment that they have to pay for these servers. And the thing with games like Halo and Call of Duty is they continuously bring out more DLC, and all of the people playing the game and purchasing the game initially help pay for these servers. And then they bring out cosmetics, which helps to supplement a little bit more, so on and so forth. With Neverwinter and most MMOs that have come out recently, they're all free to play, free to download, and they rely solely on people purchasing cosmetics or gear upgrades or whatever with real money. And it ends up going into this vicious cycle of they want to cater to a basic crowd, but they need to cater to the people who are giving them money, because without the money, they can't keep the game online. And so they initially start out with this focus of, oh, well, we are going to cater to as many people as we can, and it's going to go as well as we can make it go, and that's that. And that's all fine and dandy, but it doesn't bring in enough revenue, and that's the biggest issue. And now, going back to RuneScape or World of Warcraft, something that I'm actually a big fan of is they use subscription-based services, but you do not have to buy the subscription to be able to enjoy parts of the game. So, with RuneScape, I'm going to go mostly RuneScape with this example, as that's the game that I played the most and still play to this day. You start out in an area with 3 major towns, and you have roughly about a dozen to 2 dozen quests that you can do, and you can level about roughly half of the skills in the game. And all of this can be done in a free-to-play, you don't give them anything area. Then there's an option to buy the subscription, and you can do this with in-game currency that you can actually earn while free to play and never spend a single penny of real money to get the subscription. Or you can spend real money and buy the subscription in a monthly basis. Now, whenever it first came out, it was $5 a month, and that was enough. But as more people started playing, as it became more popular, they needed to up the subscription amount. It eventually became $7, and then it kept increasing to the point where it's at now, where it's currently sitting at roughly $12 a month for the subscription. And a lot of people are going to be like, oh, well, subscriptions are horrible, subscriptions are horrible. That may be the case, but because of all the people who are buying and renewing their subscription every single month, the developers, JGX, are able to continuously pay their employees and be able to actually develop and create new content in the game. And they don't just focus primarily on the members stuff, which is what you become. You become a member, you get probably a half dozen or more new areas. It expands the game by about 125%, I would say. It's pretty significant. Map-wise, it's about 125%. Content-wise, you're looking at about roughly probably a 300% expansion. And again, all of this can be achieved without spending a penny, but if you want to, it helps the developers, right? And the developers, JGX, will come out with content more often than not for the members, but they also still come out with content for the free to play. They just, not recently, but semi recently, came out with a whole new area for the free to play to have access to have more stuff that they can do in the game. And that has allowed them to be able to avoid things like a battle pass, which everybody's like, oh, battle passes. We'll get to the battle pass in the future, but it avoids battle passes, it avoids needing to sell cosmetics to keep the game online, and it ultimately avoids the classification of players where you got your free to play, you got your low spenders that spend maybe $0 to $100 every 6 months, then you got your moderate spenders who might spend like 100 to 500, and then you got your high-end spenders who sometimes spend upwards of $1,000 a month. And a lot of the times the developers want to look at everybody, but as money starts getting tighter and tighter for them, they start catering more and more to those high-end spenders. And that's exactly what Bless Unleashed did. Bless Unleashed started focusing primarily on all the people who were putting in a ton of money and putting in a ton of time and doing all of this stuff that was at a point where the casual everyday player that would keep their game alive in the long run was not able to appreciate or enjoy this content and this amount of stuff that they were bringing in. And so that's why I like the subscription service the most whenever it comes to MMOs. Elder Scrolls Online currently utilizes a subscription service, and it is still alive. I don't know the full extent of Elder Scrolls Online. I don't play it myself, but I'm sure they probably will have like maybe some cosmetics and different things here and there, but in general, most of their revenue comes from the DLCs that they bring out and the subscriptions. And so what makes Elder Scrolls Online not quite in the MMOs of old like RuneScape and World of Warcraft, but not quite in the category of games like Neverwinter and Bless Unleashed. The name. The name keeps it relevant. It's the same thing with the game The Lord of the Rings Online, also known as LOTRO. It's not very popular. There's a subscription service to unlock new content in the game. You can get to different places, but it's not a roaring, active, everybody wants to see and everybody wants to play game, right? And these games, they're backed and have the names of these really, really big companies. Now, if you have been a gamer for any amount of time, chances are you've heard of the game Skyrim or Oblivion. Both are huge RPG role playing games that are purely single player and have a vast world with amazing, just absolutely amazing stories and side missions and everything else. That is, both of those are part of the Elder Scrolls series. It is Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion, Elder Scrolls 5 Skyrim, and then Elder Scrolls Online. Now, Elder Scrolls Online had a bit of a flop whenever it first came out, but because they were able to continuously appeal to the player base that loves the Elder Scrolls games, they were able to continuously keep drawing more and more people back to the game. And same thing with Lord of the Rings. It has this player base where it's like, oh, this is really cool. I kind of like this game. It's fun. But people start to fall off from it. And so they bring out this new content that's kind of really fun, really cool, really attention grabbing, and it keeps pulling people back. And with that content, because those names are as big as they are, they can continue to do this probably indefinitely. Now, do I think they will? No. But can they? Probably. I would hesitate to say that they can for sure, but it is a possibility. Then we go to the MMO games of today. Neverwinter, Guild Wars 2, Black Desert Online, Bless Unleashed, all of them go into a basic system where they try to copy World of Warcraft with getting the end game, and you want to get there, and they keep moving the goalposts just a little bit every time with every big update, so that you always are trying to work towards the next thing. This also goes for Destiny and Destiny 2, by the way. And that's great and all, but the problem is they don't have the funds to continuously do this because they're not on this subscription system. So what do they fall back to? They fall back to selling cosmetics, and they fall back to Battle Pass. Both have ups and downs, but neither one is enough to actually keep a game alive on its own, or even in conjunction. So, for example, the Battle Pass. It works great. A lot of games implement it. Overwatch, Call of Duty, Halo, you name it, it probably has a Battle Pass. And there's people who love them, there's people who hate them. The thing is whenever the Battle Pass is all purely cosmetic, like, for example, Call of Duty, Fortnite, games like that, people do it because they love cosmetics. People love looking new, fresh. They love these new graphics that they can put on their guns or put on their weapons, or this new armor skin that makes you look like a demon warlord that's casting crazy spells. And in all honesty, you're just, doing a little puff of wind, but it looks really cool when you do it. That's great. But again, it's not enough. And it's not enough because there's not enough players in the game to make it worth it. A game that is a really good example, as they made it so that it is enough, would be a completely different category of game called League of Legends. It's free to play, but you can pay to unlock different champions, but you don't have to. You can get them through free means if you want, but they also make a ton of money off of cosmetics. Now, why can a game like League of Legends succeed in that regard, but not a game like Neverwinter or Bless Unleashed? Well, for starters, it's not an MMO. It is a MOBA. And what a MOBA is, it's a multiplayer online battle arena game, right? And that essentially means two teams go up against each other, fight, try to complete an objective. Completely different from an MMO, which is a massive multiplayer online game where you're trying to just, go through a story. There's no real story in League of Legends. It's pure just PvP, which is player versus player. Games like that succeed all the time. Halo is primarily all online PvP battles. Same with Call of Duty, and so on. Now, League of Legends also came out in 2009, which is very, very, very old. Which, again, if we go back to things like Neverwinter, that came out in 2013. League of Legends is able to, and it's not just League of Legends, it's also Smite, which is another version of a MOBA. They're able to get these really fun, really engaging competitions, and it really made their game just become insanely popular, right? For League of Legends, we'll say you have the League Championship Circuit or League Championship Series, which is the North American version of the pro players, and they go up against each other. And then you got another league in Europe, in Asia, in Korea, in Japan, Australia, you name it. They're all over the place. People love seeing the top of the top, the best players in the world face it against each other. And then they have a worlds event where teams from different regions would come together and face against each other, and then one can come out as a victor and they're the best team in the world and yay and all that. League of Legends can do that. MOBAs can do that. Even first person, third person shooters like Halo, Call of Duty can do that, because that's skill based and fast action and really, really engaging and fun to watch, and makes for a really, really good show. MMO games can't do that. League of Legends, a lot of the skins that come out after, during, or right before some big competition finals. Usually it's like the, say, LCS, the League Championship Series in North America, just had their finals complete. Within the next week or two, they will probably have a new set of skins out. Whenever Worlds is over and one team is declared the best team in the world, all the players on that team get to make or choose a champion that gets a skin in the game that is essentially what they want it to be. They get to design a champion skin, and then the fans of these people go out and spend tons of money on these skins because they're like, oh my god, Faker, Don Juan Gaming, Don Juan Kia Gaming, they're amazing. Oh, T1, Cloud9, whatever it is, and people are like, they gravitate to that because it's like normal sports, American or European football, rugby, soccer for America, or baseball, whatever it is. People gravitate towards it because people love seeing the best of the best go against each other. And that's just how it is, right? And so this is very successful and sells thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of skins every single time. So much so that League of Legends has been free to play for a long time. I'm pretty sure it's always been free to play, but has started becoming a little bit more lax on some of the stuff so that they can, not make people pay to be able to play certain aspects of the game as much, because they're making millions every time they release a new set of skins. MMOs aren't able to do that. They can't create the same hype or the same excitement that these esports games are able to do. They're not able to get a team where, oh well, here's a Neverwinter team A with so and so, so and so, and so and so. They're facing off against Neverwinter team B of so and so, so and so, and so and so, and they fight each other. That doesn't work, because at the core, the gameplay isn't that skill based. You have basic skills, basic movement, and each, like every character, every person is going to have roughly the same setup no matter how much they want to try to work on it. It's always going to be roughly the same. There's no variation. PvP is not something that is massively focused on. Now, with that being said, I know a lot of people are going to be like, oh, well, what about New World? I rebuttal with, how popular is it now? New World was all the rage whenever it was first in early access and being beta tested and all that other stuff. And it came out swinging and everybody thought it was fun. And now I don't know of anybody who actually plays New World regularly. I'm sure there's people out there, I'm sure people will be like, I play it regularly, but the player base has shrunk so much that it doesn't have even a tenth of the original player base, I would say. And that's the same thing with Neverwinter, Bless Unleashed, whatever. All of them come boil down to there's no true skill-based thing involved. So selling skins isn't going to work because they have nothing to make the skins worthwhile to get, right? And so we fall back to the battle pass. Well, the battle pass has to work. Look at Halo, look at Call of Duty, look at Overwatch, look at Fortnite. Great, but again, it comes back down to it's cosmetic. It's still some kind of skin. So they try to supplement it. They try to put in like, oh, well, if you buy the battle pass, you'll get this much, and this is a paid currency, and you can use it to maybe get this instead of this, and it'd be kind of cool. And check this out, and look at this, and then it starts becoming a pay-to-win game, and it creates that gap once more. The free-to-play players will never have the ability to do that, while the players who spend thousands of dollars on the game will have all of this stuff and make it so that 90% of the endgame content requires this stuff, and so the casual players can never get to that endgame content, and it creates a massive wall. And that's where a lot, if not all, of the MMOs fail. They get into this pattern of, let me release this game free to play, make it so that skins and whatever else is how we pay for everything, and then this gap appears, and it's never fixed. It's never even remotely thought about. It's always, oh, it'll go away, and it doesn't go away, and the game fails. And that's the biggest problem. They're not making money. No matter what anybody says, no matter what, you know, developers even say, because let's be honest, if you fail something that was supposed to be big, let's go with Bless Unleashed, for example. It was huge. It was published by Bandai Namco Entertainment of America. I originally found it because I went to PAX East one year and I thought it was really cool, and then they brought me on as a preferred content creator, and I was super excited, and these devs were obviously crazy proud of their work. They don't want to admit that they're broke and they're not making enough money to keep the game going. Let's be honest here. Like, nobody wants to admit that. And that's okay. That's part of being human. That's part of, the realizations of game developers. So all of this is all fine and dandy, but how can the developers of MMO games change the script, make their games more successful, make their games worth playing and coming back to? Get away from the Neverwinter template. I don't know why MMOs have started going with the Neverwinter template of baseline story, a couple classes, no major variation in skills, like castable skills, and it's very linear all the way up until you start getting to this endgame content, and it's not quite the World of Warcraft size raid content, but it's also not quite like just solo content that you can do, right? There's no balance, there's nothing. Get away from that. It doesn't work. It's been tried and tested time and time and time and time and time again, and it does not work. It doesn't matter who's backing you. It doesn't matter how big you think you are. It won't work. Period. Just flat and simple. If you're gonna go with a raid style game, you need to go all in on the raids. And games like Destiny and Destiny 2 have kind of done that, but they also have the Vanguard missions or whatever they are, which are like smaller versions, but they're like more difficult storyline missions, but also like not as difficult as a raid would be. And then you got certain raids where it's like 5 people go into the raid and it's actually a quote unquote raid, but it still lacks the big thing that World of Warcraft does well: bringing massive amounts of people together. Yes, there's raids, and you can have up to like 5 or 6 people, whatever it is, in the raid. If you look at World of Warcraft, to this day, World of Warcraft came out in 2003. To this day, both World of Warcraft and World of Warcraft Classic, which I think came out in 2019, have new raids coming out that you need 20, 30, 40, 50 people to complete. Now, obviously, once you start getting the equipment and the levels and everything else from that raid, you can start doing some of the older raids, and you don't have to worry about having a ridiculous amount of people. But for the new content, when it comes out, you have raid guilds coming together, almost 100 people, probably, I would say, coming together, going for raids, going for these rare drops, these rare unique items that's really going to push them to the next level for the game. Get them to that, oh, we have the best stuff in the game point. Get them some of those cosmetic things like the mounts that they want to get, right? Destiny and Destiny 2 and pretty much every other game that tries to incorporate some kind of raid fails to do that. And now I understand why they probably don't go for these massive size raids. It would be pretty much impossible to be able to corral a community so much and get them working together and talking and interacting with each other to the point where you can get raids of that size going. Which then tells me that the time of raids being the main focus for a MMO game is almost over. They've really died down. World of Warcraft is really the only one that does mass raids, and they're really the only ones that ever did mass raids. And any other game that has tried to do mass raids or raids in general have slimmed them down, and they're not as good. Just being completely honest here. Then you got RuneScape. RuneScape is one that boggles my mind. So, for reference, I started playing RuneScape back in 2001 whenever it was a browser, 2 Flash games game. I was 6 years old. I had no idea what I was doing. I was just running around, clicking, killing chickens, and thinking I was the coolest kid in the world. I'd connect dial up, and I'd play for a while. And usually, at some point, I'd go and play like Dragon Fable or Adventure Quest or something like that. But those are games for a different time. RuneScape doesn't rely on raids. Now, they do have raids in the game. They just recently released Raids 3 in old school RuneScape. I don't know much about RuneScape 3. I play old school RuneScape now. They do have raids. You can do mass raids. You can do like 5, 8, 40 for one. Like, there's multiple different sizes for the raids that you can do, but that's not the content that they're pushing the most. There's so much more to RuneScape than just raids. Going back to what I was talking about earlier, that feeling of accomplishment when you level your woodcutting or something goofy or whatever. It's pretty interesting. Uh Let me see here. There are currently 23 different skills. All of them start out at 1 except for your hit points, which starts out at 10. You can level all of them up to level 99, which takes roughly about 13.3 million experience. And you are halfway there experience-wise when you hit level 92. Now, this might seem crazy because that means the stretch from 92 to 99 is about 6.5 million experience, give or take, whatever it is, 6.1, 6.7, whatever it is, right? From like 1 to 40, you can do things that would normally net you roughly about maybe 5 to 15,000 experience an hour. And by the time you hit the 90s or getting close to halfway for the skill, you can sometimes get upwards of 2 to 300,000 experience an hour in some skills, while other skills you are forced to go with the slow route. And that might seem horrible, but again, it gives you that feeling of accomplishment. There's something at every level. And then what makes it even better is there's this very nice piece of cosmetic that everybody is working towards, whether they realize it or not, that once you get all 23 skills to 99, you get a cape. And only people with all of their skills at 99 get this cape. And then you're that cool person who has this cape that's really awesome. But that's still not what RuneScape focuses most of their attention on. They focus their attention on, in the game, there's probably about a dozen or more storylines. Some of them interact, some of them are completely separate from everything else. During these storylines, the developers, Jagex, they know that some of them are sometimes really goofy and out there, and they play into it. It can be comical. And 9 times out of 10, you go through probably about 10 to 15 quests per storyline. So much so that I think there's like over 100 quests, 150 quests in the game currently. And again, each one has its own story, which in itself is impressive because it's all unique. It's all based off of just the developers' pure creativity, which, again, if we go back to World of Warcraft, is what all the expansions are for. But they bring out all of this stuff for free, which is probably crazy to most, but they do. And usually, as you start getting later and later into the game, whether it's skills, quests, whatever, you start getting to this point where you're needing better gear. And to get better gear, you gotta buy it, or you gotta get it as a drop. And so you're fighting these end game bosses working towards getting these drops. And so you're on this constant quest to level your skills, to get better gear, to complete all the quests, to do everything that there is to do in RuneScape. And Jagex just keeps bringing out small little bits of things here and there, new quest here, new right there. Just sprinkle it all just a little bit and put each one with, like, in between each one, have bug fixes and just constant updates, constantly working on the game. So much so that once you're in it, and like I would say once you get to about mid-game, chances are you're continuously going back. And like for myself, I've been playing since 2001, but I've been playing on and off. I haven't been playing every single day or even every single year. I would sometimes go 2-3 years where it's like, I don't want to play RuneScape. It's boring, whatever. Poof, just poof, just off to the side. It's not important. Give me Halo, give me Call of Duty, whatever. And then I find myself thinking, man, you know what? I kind of want to play some RuneScape. Maybe I'll just jump on, see what's new, see what's going on, because I know something's new. That's how the game is. I know that there's something going on. There's something there, something happening. And it's going to be tantalizingly just delicious. I have to see. And then I get hooked again. I find something completely new, or I do something that I used to hate and I find that I love it and I'm back at it. I'm back into the game, and I'm 4 years later, I'm still there. You know, like they do it so well, and no other game ever has been able to replicate what RuneScape has been able to bring to the table. World of Warcraft was the number one MMO game for pretty much 90% of its life. It probably still is the top MMO game in the category. RuneScape is the only game that ever gave World of Warcraft a run for its money. So much so that the communities of World of Warcraft and RuneScape would compete with each other. Oh, look at that. RuneScape had the highest CCV on this, or CCV, God, they're streaming me. Highest concurrent player count on this day, and then World of Warcraft people come over like, oh yeah, well we just got this update. Look at our numbers now. We hold better numbers than that. And it was just a constant clash. I remember with my friends, I would always be talking to them. I'd always be going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, like, oh no, RuneScape's better. No, World of Warcraft is better. And it created this dynamic that was just amazing. And they competed with each other, but all in all of the best ways. You don't see that anymore. Blessed Unleashed is off on its own. Terra was off on its own. Neverwinter is off on its own. Lord of the Rings, online. Albion online, whatever. They're all off in their little separate corners. Off doing the same exact thing as every single one of the others. The only thing that they're hoping to do is bring in people with a better story or slightly better graphics. That's it. If an MMO comes out and they can match the style of RuneScape, where it doesn't matter how long someone is away from the game, they eventually get that little nugget in the back of their brain where it's like, hey, I wonder what's new in that game. It would succeed. Flat, simple, it would succeed. There's so many things that so one of the things that I always go back to, one of the things that I always get pulled back in by is that feeling of success whenever I level skills. There's obviously skills in other MMOs. You know, you'll have like, oh, well, your cooking skill or your charisma or whatever, but none of them really had that same weight to your character. Didn't have the same feeling when you leveled it up. You didn't feel like, oh, well, I just spent 5 hours trying to level this up, and so now I have this. It's more of a, I spent 5 hours, why did I just spend 5 hours? That's the problem. There needs to be this feeling of success when you complete something, and that drive to continue to complete things more and more. And if an MMO would do that, it would succeed. It wouldn't matter what the story was because RuneScape didn't have a story whenever it first came out. It was just a flash game. It was just a couple of developers who thought it was cool, brought it out for people to play, wanted to see how it would do, and then it became one of the most successful games in video game history. Single games, not franchise, I should say. MMO games need to get away from this Neverwinter, Bless Unleashed, Terra Online, whatever it is style. Otherwise, they're just going to keep failing. That is why, in my opinion, new MMO games always fail. They follow a template, and there's nothing that makes them unique. If you strip away the graphics and make it all like PlayStation style graphics, take away the names, the logos, and put games up against each other, put MMOs up against each other, Neverwinter, Bless Unleashed, Terra, whatever, is all going to look, feel, and play the same. And that's why they fail. At least in my opinion. So, with that, I'm going to end this episode here. I hope you enjoyed my input onto why I believe new massive multiplayer online games do not succeed in the gaming industry uh, of 2023 is when I'm recording this to date it. And I hope to see that games do adopt a new style and do adopt this new way of approaching the gaming industry, because I do actually enjoy MMO games, and I would like to see new ones, new ideas, new fresh addictions of games come out. And so far I haven't seen that. So if you did enjoy this podcast, please make sure to like, follow, whatever it is, wherever it is you're listening to this podcast, just follow it. I'm going to try to bring out new episodes weekly. If you have any suggestions on a topic you would like to see me cover or hear me cover, please let me know. I am King Bullet everywhere. Look for the crown and bullet, and you probably found me. If you find some dude with long hair and facial hair, that's me. Just let me know what you would like to hear, and thank you so much for listening. And I will see all of you guys next time. Bye, guys.